we kick off a series all about joining up acquisition and engagement to achieve sustainable growth. Now, today I welcome two champions of this effort. First, I have Mike Rhodes. He's CEO at the App Growth Marketing Agency, ConsultMyApp, CMA, App Growth Agency of the Year. So congratulations on that, Mike, and it's great to have you.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. Very excited.
Indeed, and we're excited to have you because this is what you do. This is in your DNA. And to talk about it in practice, we welcome another guest. He bridges the worlds of gaming and non-gaming, and that isn't often because his career spans both. Anh Nguyen, VP of Growth at Wolt, which is a DoorDash company. We'll get to that in a moment. Welcome. Great to have you here. And I'll start here because you have a very interesting career indeed. Joining up the dots, was that what you set out to do, being in the gaming, non-gaming world?
Yeah, so it wasn't planned when I started my career. So it was started in Foodpanda, which is a delivery e-commerce company. It's by accident that I ended up in gaming. I miss every moment of that. I love what I learned and all of the people that I ever came across with. It's an amazing industry. And of course, later on, the career took a turn where I moved to Wolt and helped them to build it from ground up. So I say that I'm one of the lucky one that had an opportunity to experience and building the growth function from both and learning from both sides.
You learn from both sides, but, it is quite a journey. And as you said yourself, gaming is fun. Gaming is fun. Some might even say that you went from like the light side to the dark side, although I'm not sure which side that would be, the commerce or the gaming. What is it that you miss most about gaming or see most interesting in gaming that you might bring with you to the other side?
There are a lot of them. I tell about the people that I ever work with, how creative everyone have been in gaming and still be. How data-driven they are, not just from doing marketing, but like product development, building features, how quick and responsive when it comes to iterations, improvement, incremental changes to make the product better. That's something that I definitely miss on the gaming side, from both the marketing and the product side. Not saying that in the e-com or non-gaming thing doesn't happen at speed of light, but because of a lot of the physical operations, things take a bit longer. And that's something that probably I do miss from the gaming.
You work with both types of apps as well, Mike, gaming, non-gaming. Is it the case that it's so much dark side, light side, or are they very, very similar?
Some aspects are similar. If you look at publishers and game studios, they are the coolest offices to go into. You go into like King.com or the Mind Canyon, like their offices are really really cool. I don't think it's quite the same. You go into like a Tide or something like that. But fundamentally, I think any app or title publisher, developer, they're all trying to do the same thing. They're trying to find people that are interested in their game or their product, and ultimately keep them happy, keep them engaged, and make them advocates of their brand. So in the same sense as bricks and mortar businesses are trying to get footfall in through the door and get people to repeat business. The same in the sort of the games and the app world. We love working with both, and I think they've both got pros and cons. I mean, I'd be quite interested on the sort of product and because you've got first-hand experience here. On the product to marketing connection, do you find it's different in games, in the gaming world versus what it is outside that in sort of e-com? Do you think they work better in games or worse? They have a better connection, or is it just equally challenging?
I would say it's both equally challenging and interesting. Depends on the company, of course. In gaming, as I mentioned, like the product iteration is happen a lot quicker. But for the fact that they're selling digital goods, you can scale the user. You can scale until the server crash. There's no limitation. In the e-commerce or anything that would be a hybrid with the digital service combined with the physical operation, There always a certain limitation when it comes to what kind of city, what kind of countries that you would be able to go to. Think about that you have to localize a lot more than the gaming when it comes to not just the languages, but also like to the actual kind of features that tailor to the audience in that city or in that country. And that's when you get like the best out of the e-commerce, which is something that I don't think gaming is localizing a lot when it comes to that depth of the complexity when it comes to the product development.
I guess in some senses though, in the gaming world, you'd hope if you've made an amazingly successful game that it's just intuitive. It almost doesn't need localization, and maybe that's the sort of reason that they've not gone. Obviously, if you're signing up for an account with a banking app, you need to go through KYC and identification. You need to understand how to deploy, and it's actually a bit more of an involved process. Where if you're doing a match 3 game, you see 3 pears or 3 candies or 3 donkeys, whatever it is you want to match on, and you sort of understand, they've gone right. That's the sort of concept of the game. I wonder, does that mean that localization and having local language is a lot less important in the game sector, or do you think it's just not used as much as it should be?
If you talk about like the grand scheme of the global game from King.com, from Supercell, from Rovio, there's not so many of the cases that they actually go into that depth of localizations. Like it was interesting to even think about, if you go to Japan, would you need to have people on the ground building up the operations? In gaming, that probably like you can deal with it without even having people on the ground. If you're talking about e-commerce or delivery service or banking, that's a must. You need to have someone to dealing with local operations, setting it up, building the connection with the local customer or local supplier. So those are probably like a quite an interesting difference between these two.
A really interesting point, because we work with Grab in China, and having obviously delivery, you've got to have that presence, and in China it's even more difficult these days to try and operate from afar. So they have to have significant operations out there, and from what you're saying, I guess that is applicable to anyone that has a real world presence, and it's a big challenge, I think, for those companies, because it just makes things a lot more complicated. Whereas a games company, your game is probably going to work in China as well as it does outside. You don't necessarily need people present in that market.
This is where it's get interesting, right? Because you're talking about gaming, it's so easy to go from country to country. Like you can pretty much publish a game globally, except China, because you need a license in there. But if it's easy for you, it's easy for everyone. Your competitor is not just the one next door. It's some developer from another country, another city. You're facing tens of thousands of them. The barrier to entry is a lot lower because everyone can set up the game. Like you scale until server crash. But if you think about the e-com or deliveries or non-gaming, because of the local operation, if you can count on how many direct competitors that you have in a single market, I'm pretty sure that it's less than 5 because of that complexity. So it's a high risk, high investment, but high return.
I can hear you speaking from experience here. I mean, I know you are, but it sounds like deeper experience. It's the kind of feeling you get when you have life lessons. Something was very frustrating. Something was maybe very fulfilling. Tell me about the experience of localizing, because commerce, again, very different from games. And maybe, just maybe, to Mike's point, you went in and tapped some of that cool creativity from gaming and brought that out to commerce.
There are actually a lot of good lessons that I brought with me from when I joined Wolt, because we could have actually copied what our direct competitors or some other big e-commerce company in Europe that have been doing, but we chose to learn from what gaming does. And there's few things. First of all, set up the team. We want to do it very lean. I always admire in gaming where you have building the team, what we call is a lean setup, that you have one person who managing own channel for 1 or 2 games. Because different game have different monetization, different retentions. You have your, product stakeholder on the other side who constantly coming to you and say, bring me more quality user, high quality user, etc. Then when I came to Wolt, what I brought in is the exact mindset. We don't need to split the team, the marketing team, based on the channel, which is what a lot of the e-commerce company does. And if you are in the early startup or a tech grow company, you want to move fast. You don't have to like let people arguing on if Meta get the credit or Google get the credit. Which one would have more budget than the other? If I had one person who managing own channel for one or two country, which I always refer as one or two game, then that person would just make the decision right away. If I would be their supervisor, I don't even have to worry about that. Like, your budget, your target, do whatever you think it makes sense. You just need to hire the right people.
And I think that's really a centerpiece of what you're talking about. So go a little deeper with us, okay?
Sure. For the team setup itself, that was my sales pitch when I joined. So I refer to one country as one game. So I literally using that reference for when I pitch to my management, to talk to the people that would be hired, who I try to approach from the gaming side to this. And you give people more responsibility. And most of the time, the UA managers from gaming, they are not just a campaign person. They're actually an expert in data analysis. They're experts in working directly with the creative producer or designer. And they do also handling the stakeholder management with the product team of the game. And that's exactly the kind of responsibility that I expect the team from the non-gaming or in the e-commerce or delivery to also do. Then over the years, when you have more countries, more businesses, you have a lot bigger budget, you're not going to be in the pressure of like, okay, if I have new country, I have to hire people for every single channel for that country. I just have to just either give that new country for existing member, because the playbook for executing own channel is the same. Or then I can just hire one more person, but then I give them another 2 or 3 countries. It's a lot more efficient, but it's also a lot more lean when it comes to the execution side.
I think one of the points here is that team structure. That's very different. That's very interesting. Maybe it's something you see or advise your clients as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So wonderful to sit in there because, the gaming sector is known for having amazing acquisition talents. The best UA managers in the world at some point have probably come from gaming or not have experience of that, because exactly to Ann's point, they've got I sound like Liam Neeson. I've got an exact specific set of skills, but they have a specific set of skills, which isn't just they don't just know like Meta, TikTok, all Snap, all the others, but they know how to liaise with creative, and they know how to drive results. They know how to analyze the data. So we talk a lot about, the sustainable growth thing is all about data and analytics and understanding the engagement data as much as the acquisition data. And that's what a lot of the games UA managers do understand that. They understand what's happening further down the funnel, through to key conversion events and how they can move those levers in the acquisition world. And they're feeding that data back continuously. That's what makes them. They got the sustainable growth mentality. It's about scalability, about profitability. That is a mentality they've had. And games companies have always had to sort of run at scale. As Anne said, you run at the scale until your server's set on fire. And that's really interesting, because that isn't necessarily the approach or the structure that's adopted outside gaming, as I just sort of alluded to, where you may have channel managers, you may have people that are specialists in Meta. The challenge we get there, and we see quite a lot, is where companies have maybe started as a web-based company. Or in fact, may have even been bricks and mortar, but let's assume they started as web. And the challenge they've then got is they have a channel manager for Meta or a channel manager for TikTok. The problem is that channel manager is web-centric, like they know web. So then just trying to adopt that approach into app, you hit a problem, because, web specialization doesn't work in the app world. You can't configure the campaign separate. There are a whole different approach to it from a campaign perspective as well as a creative perspective. So in that sense, you then have that challenge that Arne said, but what do I now need to do? I need to get a meta specialist for apps, or a meta specialist an app specialist for TikTok. And this is like a whole different skill set. So, there are some advantages, I think, to that leaner approach. The disadvantage, of course, is that it's difficult to find those people. I mean, there's not many of them. You've got to either learn it yourself, or if you've got some funding, obviously you can approach an agency like us. But it's a real interesting challenge. That I'm really happy to hear Anne say that actually, yeah, in the non-gaming world, the structures are sometimes not necessarily the most efficient for doing that.
And I'd like to circle back because he made one interesting point, because you don't just bridge, the worlds we're talking about. It's also literally that you do need to be on location. You do need to be in the physical world and the digital realm. You've got an app, you've got a physical presence. How are you handling that in that lean team? Because you had to then find these marketers with superpowers that understand, yes, bricks and mortar and app.
It's difficult, but I'm not saying that it would be done by just one UA manager who, if I would go to like few country in Europe and that would speak on fluent language, that's never happening. It's like you're looking for a unicorn. And so we're prioritizing more the people with the UA skill. Like you have a data mindset, you are very good with stakeholder management, and you have some sort of foundational understanding about running multiple channel. Then we train you for the rest. But of course, we still have like support from our country marketing person on the ground who potentially doing like a lot of the other thing that we don't do for outside of performance marketing. Then they are the one that, of course, helping us to understand like what exactly happened on the country, how to get this kind of messages that is not translated by a localization agency, but actually have some soul into the communication that we have, because it's a very tailored, right? You go to any city, the people want to feel this is actually done by someone who live here and not by someone who, I don't know, sitting somewhere further 1,000 kilometers away, who doesn't really understand how to say it. But the early days, when I first started, which is also interesting, I thought to myself that I need to hire from gaming. And I did go and do that. But what did I get for my first year? I actually hired none of the people from the gaming side. And I came back and realized, actually, the mindset doesn't need to be that you have to look for where you used to come from. It's also from just the kind of skill set that you can find and train people to do. So if they are very data driven, they have a foundational understanding about the basic 2 or 3 channel, and they are very good stakeholder management, that's good enough. That's something we can help by learning, by doing, and then coaching. And over the years, I'm lucky enough to also bring some of the experts from the gaming side. But I think now our team nowadays, I would say the gaming experience representation is probably like less than 20%.
Let's talk about where marketing starts. And it's for both, actually. It's in the stack. The stack enables you to do what you need to do. And I heard you speak at the UA Society event in London back in October. And that's what got me very excited about this. You went through all the differences and the similarities. And there were some amazing ones, including the role of CRM in the tech stack compared non-gaming and gaming, and then your own talents as well. What is the difference at a high level? How do they differ in the tech and in the talent?
So from the tech itself is the bread and butter for all of the performance marketing or growth person. If you don't build it well, you shouldn't spend any money or even doing any engagement campaigns. It may sound obvious for 3 of us here, but if you talk to some of the founders, it's actually people normally hire people to spend money before they actually think about how they're measuring it. I always disagree. From the tech point of view, the similarity is clear. You need MMP, you need a proper campaign management tooling, you need to have a place where you're visualizing the data, all of the basic stuff. But the gaming world focus a lot on tactical performance marketing. It's very UI driven. You're seeing the creative, you're seeing the content, you're seeing the bidding. Everything is aiming to convert people immediately or within a short window. Everything is surrounding by that strategy. So your tech stack is very much like capturing by last click, by a very short window, 1 day clicks, 1 day view, 7 day clicks, etc. In the non-gaming or apps, the engagement part, which Peggy have mentioned, is a lot more critical. Like bringing people to your service to sign up, it's just a beginning. How do you nurturing them to actually make the first order, make the second order? How do you nurturing them to become a loyal customer? It's an art of itself. And this UA and CRM and paid retargeting, or even think about like brand performance, it needs to like go on the same time. I think like combined, you get like the CRM tech stack. So we have like a platform where we use, we call it iterable. Then we're running some paid retargeting campaign. It took us quite a lot of time to actually build and learn and tailor it into the model, the business model that we have. But that's something that I don't think a lot of gaming company that I ever talk invest into CRM. Some company done it. When I was in Rovio, we did some of that at scale. But the challenge is always like, if you're looking for quick win, it's not gonna come immediately. And that's like a years of investment that they need to be put into this.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think, King.com, I know they built their own engagement platform. I was actually working for a company software company, I won't name them. At the time, we went out to Barcelona to try and, position our engagement platform for them. And they took all the ideas and said, actually, we'll just build it ourselves because we have the money to do so. Oh, great, wonderful. So it obviously backfired a little. But, arguably that didn't work. And I think the reason I think that is because at that particular time, this is going back quite some time, yes, player retention was always a thing, and identifying lapsing users and trying to reactivate the ones that have gone, that was always a thing. But that engagement, that nurturing, that building that relationship, I don't think that necessarily was there back then. That's what you need, like an iterable or one of those platforms. You need proper platforms in order to achieve that. And it's not just about scheduling some local notifications to give people tips on, how to get to the next level. You've got to build a relationship with them, give them some nice curated content, something related to the game. And that does take time on, and like you said, a lot of effort, because you're building a relationship in the non-gaming world. The ethos is totally different. Like one world, you have relationships which are super casual, and in the next realm, when you're looking at food delivery or banking or fintech, that relationship, ideally, if it's going to be worthwhile, needs to be at least 6 months, 12 months, 24 months long, and that requires a lot of work.
And I want to add a bit on the measurement part of the engagement, because if you would be coming from gaming or any growth marketeer, you need to measuring it, even if you don't assume that you put any money, because it's CRM, it's your own channel. But it took us like quite some time to building our own kind of incrementality measurement, because unlike acquisitions or with the MMP, where it's based on last click, in the engagement world, the main question is actually, if the people click on my email or my push messages, I actually don't care about it. What I care about is that if I run this campaign, what is the incremental growth that I get from there? And that's a big difference that I don't think a lot of the company actually have been focusing on. Like most of the time people think about the click, but actually the click doesn't really give any money value or lifetime value to your campaigns. The incrementality does. Your CEO would challenge you, regardless of you tell him that it's 20% click rate or 20% conversion rate. The main question is that if I wouldn't run this campaign, what do I get versus what you give me on top of what organically the people would come back anyway.
And that is thankfully a change, but I think the whole market is moving and it's starting to think more about that, because it's the same analogy in acquisition world. It's an install. What does an install mean? It means nothing. What does a click mean? These are meaningless vanity metrics. Like, I could generate 1 million installs and only one person purchases, makes an in-app purchase, then it's not really a successful campaign. What would be useful, I'm sure, for people listening is to understand how you're measuring that and where are you measuring. Are you measuring it just in the customer engagement in iterable, just using control groups or holdout groups, or are you measuring it in your CDP against vaster volumes of data? It'd be really interesting to know how you're actually going about that.
I'm a strong believer of building a tech in-house, because you build the engagement, there's two parts. The segmentation, which is a CDP part, and then the measurement, which is the incrementality measurement. So we built that in-house. So we didn't use a third-party CDP. We're building our own audience builder tooling. With the concept is quite simple. You have a control group and you have a non-control group. Every campaign, every audience that you have, it would tie toward, control group versus non-control. You run the campaign, you give whatever kind of messages, whatever kind of promotion, incentive. Then after a week, after 2 weeks, you can even measuring like long-term incrementality. Then you can see that incrementally, what is it 20% incremental uplift? Is it 50% incremental uplift? Sometimes it's actually minus 5%, which means that there's no incrementality. But that's good to know. That means that my campaign is in the wrong direction. I should try to do something else. But that's actually like the two part that we build in how as sort of like a giant machines of how we can like constantly measuring the incremental uplift. And to the C level, that's what they want to hear. If you're not doing anything, this is how much you're going to lose. If you do this, this is how much gain we bring into you.
So I have to ask you, having built this and also observing this, audiences, they change. They're not always going to be sort of the rigid flow chart or flow that you have in mind. So what does an engaged user, customer of Wolt DoorDash look like to you? And how has that also changed?
There's so many use cases when it comes to the engagement that the behavior is constantly changing. Either you educate them, but the change on the user behavior doesn't apply for the whole populations. It may sound obvious that people would order more after COVID, but there's still a subset of the audience who doesn't do it. So the marketing come in where we support both the early adopter for upselling to new service, new features. You know that you can order not just food, but also grocery takeout. Then you can also think about the message, the kind of incentive that you can target for the audience who probably not even know that you have the grocery takeout or not even care until you tell them. So by segmenting those users based on their behavior, based on their purchasing pattern, then you can build a different kind of tailored campaign that support and nurturing their behavior toward that. So that's probably like the biggest changes that we have seen happen. It's not just happen based on the external factor like COVID, but it's also like something that we're doing in-house with the marketing.
On that, Ahn, as a sort of follow-up question to it is, with the campaigns that say are targeted, obviously you're looking at transport, food delivery, grocery delivery, and the usual sort of suspects, the USPs for these apps. How are you tailoring the experience to really, hammer home the message from a product to UX perspective, and the content they then see after they've engaged with the message?
So personalization is the ultimate goal. We actually have been spending a year working on it. I'm not saying that we are currently an expert. There's still just the beginning of the journey. But I remember on the early day where it's pretty much like a generic message. Even if you would be in a northern part of a city comparing to someone in the southern part, the message is very much generic for you. We give you potentially some free delivery, and we hope that you would convert. Over the years, when we try to get a lot more personalized, that's what the end game. Like if you would live in the northern part of the city, you don't want to open an email and start seeing that, okay, the restaurant that you, or the grocery shop that you proposing for me to try is somewhere like 10 kilometers away. It would take like hours until the food would get to you. Not to mention, hypothetically, if you are a vegan, and one of the things that I show you is a juicy burger with meat and whatnot, that's probably not going to be something that you look for, right? So personalization is the end game, and that's what we have been working on to building on top. We have like a program where we're trying to like win you back on nurturing you, but then we also have like another track where we try to like make it more personalized for you. That actually you open it and you feel, okay, this one understands me more. Just like Netflix, they know me better. That's what we want to be. I don't think we are there yet, but that's the end goal.
I want to talk about that because that is, as you said, it's a journey. You're at the start of it. And there are learnings, there are mistakes, there are marketing nightmares, and there are marketing nirvanas along the way. It's a little bit of both. I'd love for you, Ahn, to share some of this and maybe also a little bit of not just what you've experienced, but what it teaches you, what it can teach our audience.
A lot of things that I would have done differently 4 years ago when I first started. There's few things that I would have learned as lessons and I would have done differently. Probably I would started to invest more into engagement marketing from my first year when I joined. I mean, back then, of course, like we grow. The only thing that matter is the new user, new user, new user. Not saying that our retention is actually very good, our product is sticky. Would we have done better? It would actually set up like in a lot better foundation when we expand from few countries to 25 countries that we are now. So technology to build it is actually not a rocket science or something dramatically different than what you have nowadays comparing to 4 or 5 years ago. So if you would have had a head start, it's probably put you way ahead comparing to any other competitors. I think we invested into the tech from very early day. Tech, not just from the measurement part, the attribution, but also the automations, bidding automations, engagement automations. It took time. I would also wish that we could also do a lot of that earlier. And the reason why I believe that we should do earlier, because we're controlling all of the data. We build all of the model in-house. Any automation would build on top of what you have. If you were using any third-party service for your measurement that you'd have no idea how they attribute, you don't do anything in-house, it's impossible for you to build any automation. But we did all of that from day one. I would have loved to actually invest it into those two. And the last piece is probably when it comes to what I call is a brand performance, or I call it a brand performance. So doing brand buying, but in a more data-driven. Probably because I come from game that I can never accept anyone to do media buying, like spend $1 million and then say that, okay, I don't know how to measuring it. That's something that we got better over time, but that's probably something that I would also love to do a lot more earlier in our early days when I started.
Mike, there are nightmares along the way. There are nirvanas along the way. He shared a few of them. What does that compare?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me what I've done wrong along the way.
More with the marketers that you're working with. Does that resonate? Is that sort of where you see the struggle, but also those great learnings, those eureka moments?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was really interesting. Arm's talking about, I wish I'd put money into engagement back in the day. 5 years, 5 or 6, I don't know, many years ago, I can't remember now, but I was at the App Promotion Summit and there was a panel of experts, on stage. They were growth experts. So I'd argue they should have been as experts in acquisition as engagement. I don't think that was the case, but I put the question to them. If I had $1 million or you each had $1 million spare budget tomorrow, where would you put it? In acquisition or in engagement and retention? Every one of them went for acquisition. And I was like, oh, well, in a way that's good because it means there's growth for me and my agency to go in and, try and promote this concept of, sustainable growth. Any investment into engagement, it's fixing any holes in the bucket. And that means that everything you put in just becomes more effective. So, it's always, in our view, the two need to be balanced. But if you've got a leaky bucket, it's worth spending that, however much to maybe in the technology or the people or the campaigns to sort of improve that, because whatever you do there, it's going to have net positive result for existing customers. You're going to get more value out of them, and anything you're driving from the acquisition becomes more efficient. Suddenly your CPAs come down, and you see, because you're making more of every person that comes through the door. So a lot of people we've come across over the years, a lot of businesses we work with, were potentially in that sort of bucket where the focus was on growth. I didn't really care as long as I got new people through the door. That was good. And I think it's a big thing that's changing though. People aren't happy just spending money without being able to attribute it anymore. But I think it's just a maturity of the app market. The app world itself is not super old. I mean, it's not a baby anymore, but I don't think it's middle-aged. I think it's sort of in its youth and it's still going through learnings. I think it's got a lot of learning, but, still got a few. I don't know, how old would I put? I'd say the app, if it was a person, the app world would be a 24-year-old person. It's about 24, 25 years old. That's how I would measure it. In terms of its knowledge and world experience, but it's open to learning and it's open to new experiences.
I agree with Mike that I don't know, like I cannot put a biological age for app businesses, but I think there's a lot of things that the app can learn from the game when it comes to setting up the team, building up the tech stack, building up like the kind of profile, the talent that you want to bring over. It doesn't need to be an expensive investment. You just need to have the right mindset of how to build it accordingly. But on the other hand, I would still think there's a lot of good things, like for example, the engagement, that the app is way ahead of the gaming war. That's something that the gaming may not spend enough time on it, for a good reason, because, and this is actually one question from the UI Society in London that people ask, like, if you would be doing the engagement for game, what strategy are you going to do? Actually, you should forget about your overall install base user. If you have 100 million install, and then your conversion rate of payers, let's assume it's 3%, you have 3 million people right there. Whatever kind of audience segmentations, engagement strategy, just focus on the payers. Forget about the 97, focus on the 3 million payers. Like, your goal is to how to help them to go from 1 purchase to 2 purchase, 2 purchase to 5 purchase, 5 purchase to 10 purchase. How do you go from 10 euros spent per month to 100 euros spent a month? That would be like a lot more efficient, a lot more focus for the gaming if they want to try, rather than like apply the model, whatever strategy for the whole user base that they have.
And on that note, I just want to continue with that, because you said yourself, it doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be a lot. It's that focus. So let's talk about something that you did, something small you did that had a huge impact, or at least a big impact on retention that you can share. So those little tweaks along the way, what was one of them?
The obvious model, which is the RFM, recency, frequency model. So that's the foundational part. That together with the measurement, that's probably like the bread and butter of everything that we did. So that's probably some of the good achievement that I think that setup's a bit different from a lot of the other company, that we really invest into building out a way for us to measuring incrementality of the campaigns. Of course, not saying that my team member who doing email marketing versus the guy that doing Facebook retargeting doesn't come to me and say, okay, what would be the weighted value or attribution that my campaign or my channel bring to the engagement campaigns? That's something we still need to figure out. But on the grand scheme, the only thing that I care about, and I think pretty much every C-level, is that you have 10,000, 1 million audience. If you would run any engagement campaign tomorrow, the only thing I care about, do you have a control group? After this campaign is done, what is the incrementality that you build? So it's not a rocket science. Everyone knows that if you want to measuring incrementality, you need to have a control group. But in order to build it and make it into some simple measurement, that's actually not the easiest. And it took us actually quite some time to figure it out and building a way for us to follow up every single engagement campaign.
You talked about the control group, and you said it is simple, but it's also potentially very dangerous if you get it wrong. So the sampling of that control group and how you select who goes in, obviously, I've seen lots of ways it's been done incorrectly, but it'd be interesting to know how you decide who falls in your control group, so you get an accurate sort of representation.
Yeah, so there are two layers of setting up the control group on the campaign level and on the population level. So population level meaning that you take out, let's say, a few percentage point of the whole population. If you have 100 million, you take out 2 or 3%, they will not receiving any communication throughout the whole year. Then you have a true incrementality. The second layer, which is more like day-to-day, week-to-week, is that every single campaign you take out a certain percentage of the audience. You have 10,000, 100,000 user for a certain campaign or segments. Then let's assume that you take out 10, 20%. Then you can actually measuring the incrementality on the campaign level. So you have 2 layers to make sure that you can see the short-term and the long-term impact if you do it that way.
Great advice. And I want to wrap this up because for me, everyone is much more than a title. And looking into what you do, Ahn, it's interesting. You are about growth, and you literally, I think this is exciting, literally run the distance because you are very into running as a sport. So tell me about your personal inspiration and what you draw from your love of sports as well as your love of your job to just be a better version of yourself.
So I like to be surrounded by the most talented people.
Well, there you're
And,
right.
exactly. But
In the world, yeah.
I think everyone does that, and I truly believe that building a global businesses is require an international mindset. So that's about like recruiting the best people, not just in a single location, single industry, but actually bringing people from different expertise, different company that they used to work, different background, different countries, and we actually have a very international team. So on the personal and professional level, I would actually feel very enjoyable working with those talented people, not just because they are the best at what they have been. They're coming from 10, 20 different industry, 10, 20 different kind of company that actually make you learn from all of those every day. And actually, I learn from every single new hire that we have, that when I talk to them, I actually learn, oh, actually, there's something that they, from their experience that I didn't even think about. And that's what I love about. If I would have been started when I built this company and I would be lucky enough to hire one of my first people who are from gaming, I probably continue that path. Life would probably be a lot more different. I don't know if I would have done a lot of different things that I have a luxury over the year to do. So I definitely say that I have been lucky to have a different turns in my career, in my life, to be able to get there.
Well, I have to say, I think we've been very, very lucky to have you on the show. And I mean that sincerely. It's great hearing how you bring together these worlds and how you've cross-pollinated them. Not saying that gaming or non-gaming has it all, but what they can learn from each other. And that's allowed us to learn from you. On. Thank you so much. Mike, thank you as well.
Thank you,
No, it's
Becky. Thank you,
wonderful.
Mike.
Really, yeah, really great to chat on. I think we've got very similar mindset on things. I'm sure we'll continue this conversation further down the line.